Welcome to Dreamweaver Tales. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let my voice guide you into a world of peaceful dreams. The world holds its breath in these tender moments before dawn, when darkness begins to soften at its edges and the very air seems to shimmer with anticipation. You can feel it even before you see it, that subtle shift in the atmosphere that whispers of change, of seasons turning their ancient wheel. One spoke further toward winter's quiet embrace. The meadows stretch out before us, vast and patient, as they have for countless mornings before this one. Yet today carries something different, something magical in its crisp stillness. Step closer with me to the window, where the glass has grown cool beneath the night's gentle touch. Your fingertips might trace small patterns in the condensation that has gathered there, each swirl and curve catching the faintest hint of light that has begun to creep across the horizon. The panes frame our view like a living painting, one that changes with each passing moment as nature reveals her newest masterpiece. There, spreading across the meadow like a whispered secret shared between earth and sky, the first frost of the season has arrived. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or drama. Instead, it settles with the quiet confidence of something that belongs, something that has been patiently waiting its turn. Each blade of grass wears its delicate coating, like jewelry crafted from winter's own breath, transforming the familiar landscape into something altogether more enchanting. The frost catches what little light filters down from the pearl gray sky, creating thousands of tiny mirrors that wink and sparkle as a gentle breeze moves through the meadow. It's as if someone has scattered diamond dust across the field while the world slept, each crystal so perfectly formed that you almost hesitate to disturb it with your gaze. The transformation is complete yet subtle, dramatic yet peaceful, the kind of quiet miracle that nature performs when she thinks no one is watching. Let your eyes wander across this transformed landscape, following the gentle undulations of the meadow as it rolls away toward the distant tree line. The frost doesn't cover everything uniformly. Here it clusters thick and white along the sheltered hollows where cold air has pooled like an invisible lake. There it traces delicate patterns where the wind has played. Some areas glisten with heavy coating that makes the grass appear almost white, while others show just the faintest silvering, as if winter has painted them with the lightest possible brush. The air itself feels different this morning, sharper, cleaner, carrying scents that speak of wood smoke from distant chimneys and the earthy perfume of leaves beginning their slow surrender to autumn's call. When you breathe in deeply, the coolness fills your lungs with an almost effervescent quality, like drinking from a mountain spring that has never known warmth. Your breath, when you release it, forms small clouds that dissipate quickly in the still air, becoming part of the morning's gentle symphony of mist and moisture. Somewhere in the distance, a bird offers a tentative call to the lightening sky, perhaps a robin testing its voice against the morning quiet, or maybe a wren announcing its presence to the transformed world. The sound carries clearly in the crisp air, seeming to travel farther than it would on a warmer day, as if the cold itself has become a conductor for nature's subtle orchestra. Other sounds begin to emerge as you listen more carefully. The almost inaudible whisper of grass blades brushing against each other as the breeze moves through them. The soft, settling sounds of frost continuing to form in the shadowed places. The eastern horizon has begun to show the faintest blush of approaching sunrise, though the sun itself remains hidden behind a veil of morning clouds. This indirect light is perfect for revealing the frost's handiwork, bright enough to illuminate each crystal formation, yet soft enough to avoid the harsh glare that might disturb the meadow's peaceful composure. The light seems to move like water across the field, pooling in some areas while barely touching others, creating a landscape of gentle contrasts and subtle variations. Notice how the frost has chosen its canvas with an artist's eye for detail along the edges of the meadow, where tall grasses give way to scattered wildflowers. The crystals have formed intricate patterns that follow the natural architecture of each plant. The broad leaves of plantain wear their coating like elegant shawls, while the narrow spikes of timothy grass look as though they've been dipped in powdered silver. Even the humble dandelions, those persistent flowers that refuse to acknowledge summer's end, find themselves adorned with crowns of ice that transform them from common weeds into tiny works of art. The fence posts that mark the meadow's boundaries have become sculptures overnight, their weathered wood now highlighted with traceries of white that emphasize every grain and texture. The wire strung between them sags slightly under the weight of accumulated frost, creating gentle curves that catch and hold the morning light. Spider webs, invisible just yesterday, now reveal themselves as masterpieces of engineering, their silk threads made visible by the countless tiny crystals that cling to them like captured starlight. As we stand here together in this quiet observation, you might notice how the cold seems to sharpen everything, not just the air, but your awareness itself. Colors appear more distinct, edges seem more defined, and the subtle movements of the natural world become somehow more apparent. A single leaf, released from its branch by the night's gentle freeze, drifts down through the still air with a grace that would be lost on a warmer, busier morning. It lands softly among its frost-covered companions on the meadow floor, becoming part of the intricate pattern that winter is beginning to weave. The silence here isn't empty. It's full of potential, pregnant with the promise of the day to come. You can almost hear the meadow breathing, adjusting to its new crystalline clothing, settling into the rhythm of shorter days and longer nights. This is autumn's whisper, becoming winter's first gentle word, spoken in a language of ice and silver light that speaks directly to something deep and quiet within us all. Your own body responds to the cold in ways both subtle and profound. The cool air against your face awakens your senses, bringing a clarity that warm summer mornings rarely provide. Your hands, perhaps tucked into pockets or wrapped around a warm cup, appreciate the contrast between the external cold and their sheltered warmth. Even through the glass, you can feel the morning's chill, calling to something primal and peaceful within you. That ancient recognition of seasonal change that connects us to countless generations who have witnessed this same transformation. The meadow extends beyond what we can see from this single vantage point, rolling away toward distant hills that emerge slowly from the morning mist, like sleeping giants gradually awakening. Each rise and hollow holds its own microclimate, its own unique expression of this first frost. In the low places, where dampness collects and cold air settles, the coating will be thick and pristine. On the higher ground, where breezes move more freely, the frost might form more delicate patterns, creating variations in texture and density that reward careful observation. Time seems to move differently on mornings like this, flowing like honey instead of rushing like a mountain stream. Minutes stretch and expand, allowing space for contemplation and wonder that busier moments rarely afford. The frost itself will begin to change as the sun climbs higher, but for now, in these precious early moments, it exists in perfect stillness, unmarked by footprints or disturbed by activity. This is winter's first gift, this reminder that beauty often arrives quietly, transforming familiar landscapes into something magical while we sleep. The grass beneath this crystalline coating continues its slow preparation for dormancy, its green color still visible but muted beneath the white covering. This isn't the dramatic color change of autumn leaves, but something more subtle, a gentle muffling that speaks of rest rather than death, of patient waiting rather than ending. The meadow knows, in its ancient wisdom, that this frost is not a conclusion, but a beginning, the opening note of winter's long, quiet song. As we continue our gentle observation, notice how the frost has created its own topography. Tiny mountains and valleys formed where crystals have grown larger or smaller, thicker or thinner. In some places, individual ice crystals stand upright like miniature forests, while in others, they lie flat against the grass like a second skin. The variation is endless, each square inch offering its own unique composition for those patient enough to look closely. The approaching day will bring changes to this crystalline wonderland. Footprints will eventually mark paths across the meadow. Dogs will bound through the frost-covered grass, and children might pause to examine the ice formations with the natural curiosity that makes them such excellent observers of the world's smaller miracles. But for now, in these suspended moments before full daylight, the meadow belongs entirely to itself and to the quiet witness of morning. Our breathing has synchronized somehow with the meadow's own rhythm, slow, peaceful, perfectly matched to the contemplative pace that such mornings naturally inspire. This is nature's invitation to stillness, extended through the medium of ice and silver light, reminding us that some of life's most profound beauties are also its most temporary, its most delicate, its most deserving of gentle attention and quiet appreciation. This invitation to stillness seems to draw us naturally forward, our feet finding their way along what might have once been a rabbit's path through the taller grasses at the meadow's edge. Each step releases the faintest whisper of sound, not quite a crunch, more like the gentle separation of delicate paper layers as the frost yields beneath our weight. The emerald beneath reveals itself in tiny glimpses, where our passage disturbs the silver coating, creating a trail of small green windows that will close again as the morning progresses and new frost settles into our footprints. The field ahead opens into something more expansive than what we left behind. Here the terrain rolls in the gentlest of undulations, creating natural hollows where the frost has gathered more thickly, and slight rises where the early light catches and holds, turning ordinary grass into something that resembles fields of scattered diamonds. Each hollow forms its own microclimate of cold, its own particular density of crystal formation that transforms the simple act of walking into a journey through dozens of subtly different frozen landscapes. The air carries new scents here. The mineral smell of earth that has been deeply chilled, mixed with something green and vital that persists even under winter's first touch. There's a hint of wild herbs too, perhaps the last stubborn leaves of field mint, or the dried seed heads of summer flowers that still stand sentinel in protected spots. These fragrances layer themselves delicately, creating an atmosphere that speaks of seasons overlapping rather than one simply replacing another. Our hands, tucked deep in pockets or wrapped in warm sleeves, begin to understand the particular quality of this morning's cold. It's not the sharp bite of true winter, but rather something more gentle, a coolness that invigorates rather than punishes, that makes the warmth of our core feel more precious while never threatening real discomfort. The frost seems to amplify this sensation, creating tiny points of contact between the cold air and our exposed skin that feel almost like the touch of silk scarves drawn lightly across our cheeks. As we move deeper into this crystal-covered expanse, the character of the frost itself begins to reveal its infinite variety, where the ground dips slightly, creating natural channels for cool air to settle. The ice formations have grown into intricate fern-like patterns that spread across the grass blades, like nature's own calligraphy. Each blade becomes a canvas for these frozen inscriptions, messages written in a language older than words, stories told in crystalline curves and spirals that will vanish with the first strong ray of direct sunlight. The emerald color beneath seems to intensify as we become more attuned to seeing it through its silver veil. What first appeared as simple green grass now reveals itself as a complex tapestry of different plant life. Broad-leafed plantain pressed close to the earth, delicate clover forming small, dense patches, wild strawberry plants with their distinctive three-part leaves creating intricate patterns where they weave between the taller stems. Each species responds differently to the frost's touch, some wearing their crystal coating like elaborate jewelry, others holding it more simply like dust motes that have chosen to settle and stay. The silence here carries a different quality than what we experienced in the closer confines of the meadow's edge. This is the silence of open spaces, where sound has room to travel and dissipate, where even our own breathing becomes part of a larger acoustic environment that includes the distant whisper of wind through bare branches and the occasional soft tick of expanding ice crystals finding their final positions on their chosen surfaces. It's a silence that doesn't feel empty, but rather full of potential, pregnant with the possibility of small sounds that might emerge. The call of a late-season bird, the rustle of a small creature moving through the undergrowth, the barely audible sigh of grass adjusting to the weight of its crystalline burden. Our eyes begin to trace the patterns that frost creates when given room to express itself fully, where individual grass blades cluster together. The ice bridges the gaps between them, creating delicate lacework that connects plant to plant in temporary communities of crystal. These formations catch the light differently, depending on our angle of view, sometimes appearing as solid white tracery, other times becoming nearly invisible except for the way they bend and focus the pale sunlight into tiny rainbow fragments that last only as long as our perspective remains unchanged. The cold begins to work its way more deeply into our awareness, not as discomfort, but as a fundamental shift in how we experience the world around us. Our breath becomes visible in small puffs that dissipate quickly in the dry air, each exhalation a tiny cloud that exists for just a moment before rejoining the atmosphere. This visible proof of our breathing creates an intimate connection between our inner warmth and the cold morning air, a conversation conducted in vapor and visibility that requires no words. Moving through this transformed landscape, we begin to notice how the frost affects not just what we see, but how we move. Our steps become more deliberate, more conscious, as if the delicate beauty beneath our feet deserves careful consideration. This isn't the cautious walking of treacherous conditions, but rather the mindful movement of someone who has become aware that they are passing through something precious and temporary. Each footfall is a small decision, a choice of where to place our weight in this gallery of natural art. The light continues its subtle transformation as we walk, the early morning brightness gradually warming from cool silver to something approaching pale gold. This shift reveals new dimensions in the frost-covered field, bringing out depths and shadows that weren't visible moments before. What appeared as uniform coverage now shows itself to be a landscape of hills and valleys in miniature, where ice crystals have built up in tiny drifts and swells that mirror the larger geography of the field itself. The emerald beneath seems to pulse with its own quiet life, visible in fleeting glimpses where the frost lies thinner or where our movement has disturbed the crystal layer. This hidden green speaks of the persistence of life even in the midst of winter's first declaration, a reminder that what appears to be sleeping is often simply waiting, gathering strength for another season of growth and abundance. The contrast between the vital green and the temporary crystal creates a visual poetry that speaks to something deep in our understanding of cycles and seasons. As we continue across this natural carpet of crystal and emerald, the morning begins to assert itself more strongly. The air stirs with the first hints of what will become a gentle breeze, setting the frost-laden grass to whispering among itself in conversations too soft for human ears to fully comprehend. These movements create subtle shifts in the patterns of light and shadow, causing the crystalline coating to shimmer and dance in ways that transform our view with every slight change in the air's movement. Our hands, warming now in their protected places, begin to appreciate the contrast between our own body heat and the cool morning air. This difference in temperature creates its own comfort, a awareness of our warmth that feels more precious for being surrounded by the gentle cold. The sensation reminds us of childhood mornings spent outdoors, of the particular pleasure that comes from being appropriately dressed for cool weather, prepared and comfortable in conditions that might otherwise seem challenging. The scents in the air grow more complex as our movement stirs them up from their resting places near the ground. There's the clean smell of ice and cold earth, but also something warmer and more organic, the scent of grass and herbs that have been concentrated by the cold night, their essential oils preserved and intensified by the freezing process. These fragrances speak of late autumn's particular character, when the growing season's abundance begins its transformation into winter's spare beauty. As we move deeper into this frost-touched landscape, the mist begins to reveal itself more fully. What started as faint wisps clinging to the ground now shows its true character, a living, breathing presence that transforms the familiar meadow into something altogether more mysterious. The vapor rises from the earth in gentle columns, each one catching and scattering the early light in its own particular way. Some streams of mist move with purpose, following invisible currents of air that guide them around obstacles we cannot see. Others seem to pool and gather, content to hover in the spaces between grass clumps, like spirits reluctant to leave their earthbound homes. The interplay between this rising moisture and the crystalline frost creates a world of constant, subtle change. Where the mist touches the frozen grass, tiny droplets form and immediately freeze into perfect spheres of ice. No larger than pinheads, these miniature orbs catch the light with startling brilliance, turning each blade into a strand of jewelry more intricate than anything human hands could craft. The process happens slowly enough that we can almost watch it unfold. The mist settling, the water beading, the final transformation into ice that will hold this moment in crystal suspension until the sun climbs high enough to reclaim it. Our footsteps have brought us to a gentle depression in the meadow, a natural bowl where the mist gathers most thickly. Here the fog reaches nearly to our waist, creating the sensation of wading through clouds that have descended to earth for a morning visit. The air grows noticeably cooler as we enter this pocket of concentrated moisture, and our breath mingles with the existing vapor to create small personal weather systems that swirl and dissipate around us. The ground beneath our feet feels different here, softer somehow, as if the persistent moisture has created a natural cushion that yields gently to our weight. Within this misty hollow, sound behaves differently. Our movements seem muffled, wrapped in the humid air that absorbs and softens every noise we make. Yet paradoxically, distant sounds, the far-off call of a crow, the rustle of leaves in a tree we cannot see, seem to carry with unusual clarity, as if the mist acts as a conductor for certain frequencies while dampening others. This creates an acoustic landscape that feels both intimate and expansive, where whispered observations could travel surprising distances while our footfalls disappear almost before they're made. The frozen dewdrops here tell their own stories of the night's progression, on the taller grass stems that rise above the mist line. The ice formations are clean and simple, perfect spheres that formed quickly in the clear, cold air above the fog. But lower down, where the moisture has been more abundant and the freezing process more gradual, the dewdrops have grown into complex geometric sculptures. Some resemble tiny chandeliers with multiple tiers of ice crystals branching out from central points. Others have frozen into teardrop shapes that seem perpetually about to fall, but remain suspended in crystalline permanence. As we pause to examine these natural artworks more closely, kneeling carefully to bring our eyes level with the most intricate formations, the full scope of the night's creative work becomes apparent. Each dewdrop exists as an individual masterpiece, yet they form part of a larger gallery that extends in every direction around us. The mist creates a natural spotlight effect, focusing our attention on whatever lies immediately before us, while softening everything beyond into suggestion and possibility. This intimate viewing experience transforms our simple morning walk into something more like a private museum tour, where each step reveals new exhibits crafted by forces far more patient and precise than any human artist. The temperature difference between the misty hollow and the clearer air above creates its own microclimate of sensation. Our hands, extended into the cooler fog, feel the immediate kiss of moisture condensing on our skin when we lift them into the slightly warmer air above. That same moisture begins to evaporate, creating a subtle cooling effect that makes us acutely aware of where the mist begins and ends. This vertical layering of temperature and humidity reminds us that even in this seemingly simple meadow, complex atmospheric dramas are constantly unfolding on scales both grand and impossibly small. The scents trapped within this misty pocket carry their own particular intensity. The fog acts as a natural concentrator, gathering and holding the fragrances that would otherwise disperse into the broader atmosphere. Here we can detect not just the general herbaceous smell of frost-touched grass, but the individual contributions of different plants, the slightly sweet aroma of frozen clover, the sharper note of wild mint that has somehow survived the first serious cold, the earthy undertone of moss that grows in the dampest spots where the mist lingers longest throughout the day. Moving through this concentrated atmosphere feels like being granted access to the Earth's own breathing, the slow, steady exchange of moisture between soil and sky that continues regardless of our presence. The mist rises around us with such gentleness that it seems less like weather and more like a natural meditation, a visible reminder of all the invisible processes that sustain this seemingly quiet landscape. Each droplet suspended in the air around us represents a tiny portion of the vast water cycle that connects this humble meadow to distant oceans, high clouds, and future rainfall that may fall continents away. The frozen dewdrops at our feet offer their own lesson in the poetry of physics. Each one began as vapor, invisible and intangible, then condensed into liquid form before finally achieving its current crystalline state. They are time, made visible, capturing not just the precise moment of freezing, but the entire atmospheric history that led to their formation. The largest ones, hanging from the tips of sturdy grass blades, like natural pendants, seem to contain entire worlds within their clear depths. Light enters them from one angle and emerges transformed, broken into component colors that paint brief rainbows on the surrounding frost before shifting and disappearing as our perspective changes. As we begin to move out of this misty hollow, climbing the gentle slope that leads back to clearer air, the contrast becomes immediately apparent. The fog clings to us briefly, reluctant to let us go, creating temporary veils that swirl around our movement before settling back into the depression we're leaving behind. With each step upward, the air grows clearer and slightly warmer, though the frost here shows its own character, sharper and more defined, lacking the softer edges that constant moisture creates, but gaining a crystalline precision that makes every surface sparkle with mathematical perfection. Looking back at the misty hollow from this elevated perspective provides an entirely different view of what we just experienced. The fog pool appears now as a discrete weather system, contained and purposeful, with defined edges where it meets the clearer air around it. We can see how the mist moves within its natural boundaries, following currents and eddies that were invisible when we stood within them. Occasional gaps in the vapor reveal glimpses of the grass beneath, like windows opening and closing in an ethereal floor that hovers just above the earth. The play of early light on this layered landscape creates a visual symphony of subtle contrasts. Where the mist is thickest, it glows with a soft, diffuse luminescence that seems to come from within rather than from the sun above. The clearer areas flash and glitter with the direct reflection of sunlight on ice, creating points of brilliance that appear and disappear as the vapor shifts and moves. Between these extremes, countless gradations of light and shadow create a constantly changing display that rewards patient observation with an ever-evolving show of natural beauty. Our feet carry us now along the edge of this atmospheric phenomenon, following the invisible contour line where mist meets clarity. This boundary zone offers its own unique sensations. The feeling of moving between two different worlds within the same meadow, experiencing the subtle shift in temperature and humidity with each step. The frozen dewdrops here show the influence of both conditions, some formed in clear air and others shaped by the fog's persistent moisture, creating a transition gallery of ice formations that bridge the gap between the two environments. The sounds from the misty hollow follow us as we walk, changed now by distance and the acoustic properties of the clearer air through which they travel. What seemed immediate and present when we stood within the fog now carries the quality of memory, like echoes of an experience that feels both recent and somehow distant. This auditory transformation adds another layer to our understanding of how thoroughly the mist changes everything it touches, influencing not just sight and sensation, but the very way sound moves through the landscape around us. As we listen to these transformed sounds, we find ourselves naturally drawn to move forward, to continue our gentle exploration of this frost-touched morning landscape. The mist that had enveloped us so completely begins to thin as we walk, not disappearing entirely, but becoming something more like a translucent companion that walks alongside us rather than surrounding us. Each step carries us further into the heart of the meadows, where the early light has begun to work its quiet magic on the frost-covered grass beneath our feet. The ground here feels different from the earthier paths we traveled earlier. There's a certain springiness to each step, a gentle give that speaks of healthy soil beneath and thick grass above. Even through the crystalline coating of frost, we can sense the vitality that lies dormant, waiting for the sun's warmth to awaken it fully. Our footsteps create the softest whisper against the grass, a sound like brushing silk, punctuated occasionally by the faintest crunch when we encounter a patch where the frost has formed more thickly. The meadows stretch out before us in undulating waves of silver, each rise and hollow, catching the light differently as the mist moves across them. From our vantage point, we can see how the frost has settled more heavily in the lower areas where the cold air pooled during the night, creating pockets of intense sparkle that catch and throw back even the filtered morning light. The higher ground shows more variation, with patches where individual grass blades stand out distinctly, each one outlined in its delicate frost coating. What strikes us most profoundly as we wander through this transformed landscape is how the silver coating has created an entirely new geography of texture and light, where we might normally focus on the green variations of the grass, the different heights and densities of growth. Now our eyes are drawn instead to the patterns the frost has created. Some areas show a uniform shimmer, as if someone had scattered fine metal filings across the surface. Others reveal more complex designs, where the frost has followed the natural contours and edges of leaves and stems, creating intricate networks of brightness that map the hidden architecture of the meadow. The air here carries scents that seem both familiar and mysteriously altered. The green smell of grass remains, but it's been sharpened and clarified by the cold, mixed with something that might be the scent of the frost itself, a clean, almost mineral quality that adds depth to each breath. Occasionally, as a slight breeze moves across the meadow, we catch hints of earth and the distant fragrance of trees that border this open space, their own frost-covered branches contributing their woody essence to the morning's aromatic blend. Our path through the meadows follows no predetermined route. Instead, we find ourselves drawn by curiosity and the gentle pull of beauty, moving toward areas where the light seems particularly striking, or where the patterns in the frost create especially intricate designs. Sometimes we pause beside a cluster of taller grasses, where the frost has created what looks like a miniature forest of glass sculptures, each blade transformed into something that seems too delicate to be real, too perfect to have formed naturally overnight. The sound environment of the meadows has its own distinct character, different from both the muffled quiet of the heavy mist and the echoing clarity we experienced as the fog began to lift. Here, sound seemed to travel in gentle arcs, rising and falling with the contours of the land. The occasional call of a bird carries clearly but softly, as if the frost-covered grass absorbs just enough of the sound to give it warmth without diminishing its clarity. Our own movements create a subtle symphony of small sounds. The whisper of our passage through the grass, the almost inaudible tinkle when our movements disturb the frost enough to cause tiny pieces to fall and resettle. As we continue our wandering, we become aware of how the light is gradually, almost imperceptibly, beginning to change. The sun, still hidden behind the veil of mist and low clouds, has climbed higher in the sky, and its influence becomes apparent in the way certain areas of the meadow begin to show the faintest hint of warmth. The frost remains intact, but there's a sense of potential in the air, a feeling that transformation is approaching, though still some time away. This interplay between the persistent cold and the growing promise of warmth creates a particular kind of suspense in the landscape. We find ourselves noticing which areas still lie in the deeper cold and which have begun to receive the first indirect benefits of the climbing sun. The patterns this creates are subtle but distinct, slightly different qualities of sparkle, barely perceptible variations in the way the frost catches and reflects what light filters through the mist. In one particularly sheltered area, we discover what seems like a secret garden within the meadow. Here, the grass grows in natural terraces, creating small amphitheaters where the frost has settled with particular beauty. The cold air has pooled in these natural basins, creating frost formations that are notably more elaborate and delicate than those on the more exposed ground. Some grass blades here show frost crystals that have grown into tiny fern-like patterns, while others display formations that look like miniature feathers or the most delicate lacework. We settle for a few moments in this special place, allowing ourselves to become completely still so that we can observe details that might escape notice during movement. At this level of stillness, the meadow reveals even more subtle beauties. We notice how the frost has created different textures on different types of plants, how it clings to the broad blades of some grasses in smooth, even coatings, while on others it forms along the edges and ridges, creating outlined patterns that highlight the natural architecture of each leaf. The longer we remain still, the more we become aware of the meadow's quiet activity. Occasionally, a slight breeze will move through, causing thousands of frost crystals to shift and resettle with the faintest possible sound, like the whisper of sand moving across glass. Sometimes the thermal differences in the air create almost invisible currents that we can detect only through the way they affect the lighter particles of frost, creating slow, graceful swirls and patterns in the silver coating. From our resting place, we can observe how the meadows extend in all directions, each area offering its own variations on the morning's frost-touched theme. To one side, the ground slopes gently upward toward a line of trees whose frost-covered branches create a delicate border between the open grassland and the deeper mystery of the woodland beyond. In another direction, the meadow dips toward what might be a small stream, though it remains hidden in the persistent mist that seems to gather more thickly in the lower areas. The sense of space here is both vast and intimate. Vast because the meadows seem to extend far beyond what we can see in the mist-softened distance, creating a feeling of endless possibility and exploration. Intimate because the frost has transformed even the most open areas into collections of tiny, perfect details that draw our attention close, inviting us to notice and appreciate the small miracles that have occurred overnight in every square inch of this transformed landscape. As we eventually rise and continue our gentle wandering, we carry with us a deeper appreciation for the way natural beauty can emerge from the simplest conditions. The combination of moisture, cold, and time has created something that feels both temporary and eternal, fragile yet perfectly formed. Each step through these silver meadows becomes a meditation on the quiet artistry that surrounds us always, waiting to be noticed, waiting to transform an ordinary morning into something that touches the edge of magic. This quiet artistry reveals itself not just in what we see, but in what we hear, or rather, in what we almost hear. There's a symphony playing here in these frost-touched meadows, though it speaks in frequencies just below our ordinary awareness. The silence itself seems to have weight and texture, like the softest wool blanket draped over the entire landscape. But within this silence, small sounds emerge with crystalline clarity. The faintest whisper of our footsteps compressing the frozen grass creates a delicate percussion, each step a tiny note in this morning's composition. The frost acts as nature's own sound dampener, absorbing and softening every noise until only the most essential sounds remain. A single bird call drifts from somewhere beyond the far hedgerow, not urgent or demanding, but simply offering its small voice to the morning. The sound seems to travel differently through this cold air, arriving at our ears with unusual precision, as if the frost has polished even the acoustics of this place. As we move deeper into the meadow, our breathing becomes more visible, small puffs of warmth that briefly fog and then vanish, adding our own gentle rhythm to this quiet orchestra. There's something profoundly peaceful about seeing our breath this way, evidence of our warm life, moving through this cool, transformed world. Each exhale creates a momentary cloud that catches the early light before dissipating, a reminder that we carry our own small weather system with us wherever we go. The frost beneath our feet responds to our weight with the softest possible crunch, so subtle it's more felt than heard. This frozen morning dew has created its own instrument from every blade of grass, every fallen leaf, every small twig. Together they form a percussion section that plays only when disturbed, and even then speaks in the gentlest whispers. We find ourselves walking more slowly, not from any need to be careful, but simply to better hear and feel this delicate music being created with each step. Ahead, a wooden fence post emerges from the frost-covered grass, its weathered surface transformed by the cold morning. What might appear ordinary on any other day now serves as a canvas for intricate ice patterns. The frost has found every tiny groove and texture in the wood, highlighting the grain with delicate white tracery. Where metal staples hold the fence wire, small icicles have formed. Not the dramatic icicles of winter storms, but tiny, perfect formations, no longer than our little finger. The fence wire itself has become something magical, each strand decorated with hoarfrost that makes it appear 3 times its actual thickness. These frost formations look almost like tiny cotton bowls strung along a line, transforming practical farm infrastructure into something that belongs in a fairy tale. We pause here, drawn to examine more closely how the cold has reimagined these familiar objects. Running our finger gently along the wire disturbs the frost, and we watch as tiny ice crystals cascade downward like microscopic snow. The sensation is startling, not painful, but sharp and clean against our skin. It's a reminder that this beauty exists at the precise edge between water and ice, between liquid and solid, between the warm touch of our finger and the cold morning air. The fence line guides us along a gentle curve, and as we follow its frost-decorated path, we notice how the landscape opens into a wider expanse. Here, the meadow stretches further than we could see before, revealing the true scope of this morning's transformation. The frost extends in every direction, creating patterns that seem to follow invisible currents and flows. In some areas, the white coating appears more dense and thick, while in others it lies like the finest powder, so light it seems it might lift off with the slightest breeze. These variations tell the story of last night's conditions, where the coldest air settled, where moisture gathered most heavily, where the slightest air movement created different cooling effects. Reading this frost is like studying a map of the night's invisible weather, each pattern a record of temperature and humidity and the gentle movements of air, too subtle for us to have noticed in our warm beds. A small depression in the meadow has collected not just frost, but the thinnest possible sheet of ice over what must be a seasonal puddle. This ice is so clear and thin it's barely visible, more like a window laid flat upon the earth. Walking carefully to its edge, we can see through to the grass beneath, magnified and distorted in fascinating ways. The ice bends our view of what lies below, creating a small portal that seems to look into another version of this same meadow. Kneeling beside this natural window, we can feel the cold radiating upward from the ice, a coolness that seems to rise and mix with the warmer air around our faces. The contrast is remarkable, the sharp, clean cold from below meeting the gradually warming air above. This thin ice represents the night's coldest moment, preserved in crystal form, a record of when the temperature dropped just enough, for just long enough, to transform standing water into this fragile mirror. The morning sun, still low on the horizon, finds this small sheet of ice and sets it glowing from within. What appeared clear and transparent moments ago now holds light like a lens, concentrating and reflecting the golden rays back up toward us. The effect creates a small beacon in the grass, a natural spotlight that draws our attention to this tiny miracle of temperature and timing. Around the edges of this ice, the frost has created the most delicate formations yet. Here, where water met air at exactly the right temperature, crystals have grown in feathery patterns that look like miniature ferns or the finest lacework. These formations are so intricate, so perfectly formed, that they seem to have been crafted by an artist working with tools too small for our eyes to see. Standing slowly, we become aware again of the subtle sounds around us. A gentle breeze has begun to stir, not strong enough to disturb the frost patterns, but enough to create the softest whisper as it moves through the frozen grass. This wind carries scents that seem particularly sharp and clean in the cold air. The mineral smell of frost itself, the green scent of grass transformed by cold, and underneath it all, the fresh, almost metallic smell of a morning where water has changed its form. This breeze brings with it the faintest hint of warmth, a promise that the sun, still climbing slowly in the eastern sky, will eventually reclaim this landscape from the cold. But for now, that warming is still hours away, and we exist in this perfect moment when the night's cold work remains undisturbed, when the frost symphony continues its quiet performance. The wind moves past us and through the meadow beyond, and we can almost see its path by the way it gently disturbs the very finest frost crystals on the grass tips. But it's not uniform or predictable. The frost has created such an intricate landscape of peaks and valleys, curves and angles, that the light behaves differently on every surface. Some ice formations catch the rays and hold them, glowing steadily like tiny lanterns. Others fracture the light into moving sparkles that shift and dance. Still others seem to multiply the sunshine, sending reflected beams shooting off in unexpected directions, creating secondary light shows on neighboring plants. You find yourself drawn deeper into what can only be called an ice garden, a section of the meadow where the frost has been particularly artistic in its nighttime work. Here, the cold has transformed a cluster of wild plants into something that resembles an elaborate crystal sculpture garden. Each plant has been so thoroughly coated in frost that its original form is barely recognizable, transformed instead into fantastic shapes that suggest flowers made of glass, leaves carved from diamond, stems that could have been crafted by the most skilled jeweler. The morning sun, now painting broad strokes of gold across this crystalline garden, creates a display that seems almost too beautiful to be real. Every surface catches and reflects light differently. The frost coating a broad plant leaf acts like a mirror, sending a concentrated beam of sunshine shooting across to illuminate a delicate frost flower on the opposite side. That frost flower, with its countless tiny ice crystals arranged in patterns too complex to fully comprehend, takes that golden light and explodes it into a shower of microscopic rainbows. The sounds here are different from the rest of our frost-covered journey. As the sun's warmth begins its gentle work, the ice responds with tiny, almost musical notes. It's the sound of crystals expanding and contracting as they experience their first taste of warmth after hours of deep cold. You hear the softest tinkling, like wind chimes made of the finest glass, as ice formations adjust to the changing temperature. Occasionally, there's a slightly sharper note as a larger piece of frost shifts or a crystal formation rearranges itself. But perhaps most remarkable is what you don't hear in the way of melting. The sun is still too low, the air is still too cold for any real thawing to begin. Instead, this is simply the ice responding to light itself, to the gentle energy of sunshine, without yet experiencing its heat. The frost remains perfectly intact, its elaborate sculptures unchanged, but somehow enlivened by the golden illumination that now bathes every surface. Moving carefully between these natural crystal sculptures, you notice how your own breath creates small clouds that catch and scatter the angled morning light. Each exhale becomes a momentary addition to the light show, your warm breath creating tiny atmospheric prisms that sparkle briefly before dissipating. Even your own presence becomes part of this luminous landscape, your shadow creating new patterns of light and darkness that shift across the frost-covered ground with each step. The fragrance in the air is subtly changed as well. The sharp, clean scent of deep frost remains, but there's now something else. The faintest hint of warmth, not yet strong enough to release any actual plant fragrances, but somehow suggesting the potential for such things. It's the smell of sunshine itself, that distinctive scent that sunlight seems to carry even in winter, a freshness that speaks of sky and space, and the promise that winter, however beautiful, is not permanent. Ahead, a particularly elaborate frost formation catches your attention. What was once likely a small wildflower has been transformed into something that looks like a crystal chandelier designed by nature itself. The morning sun strikes it at the perfect angle, and suddenly this single plant becomes a symphony of light. Every tiny ice crystal acts as a lens, focusing and redirecting the golden rays in hundreds of different directions. The effect is almost overwhelming in its beauty. This one small plant has become a lighthouse of crystal and gold, visible from dozens of feet away. A beacon in this frost-covered meadow that seems to pulse with captured sunshine. But as beautiful as these individual light shows are, stepping back reveals an even more breathtaking sight. The entire ice garden spread before you has become a living constellation of golden light. Each frost-covered plant glows and sparkles independently, but together they create a landscape that seems to breathe with luminescence. The light doesn't stay still. It moves and shifts as the sun climbs higher, as air currents move the delicate ice formations, as your own movement changes your angle of perspective. The warmth is beginning to reach your skin now, despite the continued cold. The sun's rays carry just enough heat to be felt, creating a delicious contrast with the frost-chilled air you're breathing. Standing still in a patch of direct sunlight, you can feel the golden warmth on your face, while the rest of you remains wrapped in the crisp coolness of early morning. It's a sensation that perfectly captures this moment of transition. Winter still fully present and beautiful, but touched now with the first gentle promise of eventual spring. The ice formations around you seem to sense this subtle warming as well. While they remain perfectly solid and intact, there's something in the way they interact with the light that suggests a slight softening, a gentle relaxation after the night's rigid cold. The surfaces that catch direct sunlight seem to glow from within, as if the ice itself has learned to hold and channel the golden light. As you continue your slow exploration of this crystalline garden, each step reveals new wonders. A spider web, completely invisible in the darkness, now blazes forth as an intricate mandala of frost and gold. Each strand has been perfectly outlined in ice, and the morning sun turns the entire web into a circular window of light and shadow, with patterns so complex they seem to shift and change as you watch. Moving around to view it from different angles, You see how the light plays differently through the ice-coated strands, creating new patterns, new combinations of brilliance and shadow. The sun continues its steady climb, and with each degree of height it gains, new sections of the ice garden burst into illuminated life. What seemed like a random scattering of frost-covered plants in the darkness now reveals itself to be an intricate landscape of natural crystal sculptures, each one positioned to catch and play with the morning light in its own unique way. Some formations act like mirrors, creating bright focal points of reflected sunshine. Others break the light into countless fragments, surrounding themselves with dancing aureoles of golden sparkles. The beauty is so encompassing, so complete in its transformation of the familiar into the extraordinary, that time seems to slow even further. Each moment brings new discoveries as the light finds previously hidden surfaces, as your eyes adjust to see more subtle details, as the sun's angle shifts to create entirely new combinations of illumination and shadow. This ice garden, this gallery of natural crystal art, continues to evolve with each passing moment, never quite the same from one breath to the next. A living exhibition of light and cold, and the infinite creativity that emerges when winter and sunrise meet in perfect collaboration. This ice garden, this gallery of natural crystal art, continues to evolve with each passing moment, never quite the same from one breath to the next. A living exhibition of light and cold, and the infinite creativity that emerges when winter and sunrise meet in perfect collaboration. And now, as you stand at the edge of this frozen wonderland, you feel the gentle pull to move deeper into this transformed landscape, to let your feet carry you forward on a journey of quiet discovery. The ground beneath you has become something sacred in the early morning light. Each step an opportunity to connect more intimately with this winter cathedral that has emerged from the darkness. Your first footfall makes the softest sound, a whispered crunch as your soul meets the frost-hardened earth. The frozen grass beneath your foot compresses with a delicate crispness, like walking across pages of ancient parchment that have been left out under the stars. There's something reverent about this first step, something that makes you naturally slow your pace, as if you've crossed an invisible threshold into a space that deserves your gentlest attention. The cold seeps up through the sole of your shoe, a reminder of the earth's transformation. But it's not an unwelcome sensation. Instead, it feels grounding, connecting you directly to this crystalline world that stretches out in all directions. As you take another step, then another, you begin to notice how your movement changes the very nature of your experience here. Where before you stood still and let the frozen landscape reveal itself to your waiting eyes, now you become an active participant in this morning ritual, your gentle progress creating new angles of vision, new perspectives on the ice-decorated meadow. Each footstep brings you into relationship with a different patch of frosted ground, and you find yourself naturally choosing your path with care, drawn instinctively toward areas where the frost seems particularly thick, where the morning light catches the ice crystals in ways that make them sparkle, like scattered diamonds. The rhythm of your walking settles into something slower than usual, more deliberate. This isn't the brisk pace of someone trying to reach a destination, but rather the measured gait of a pilgrim moving through hallowed ground. Your feet seem to know, without being told, that this morning calls for a different kind of movement, one that honors the delicate artistry spread beneath you. With each step, you hear the gentle protest of frozen grass blades, the tiny symphony of ice crystals being disturbed and reformed, the whispered conversation between your footfall and the earth's crystalline surface. The path you choose winds naturally between the most heavily frosted areas, following the subtle topography of the meadow as it dips and rises in gentle undulations. Here, where a small depression in the ground has collected extra moisture, the frost grows thicker and more elaborate, creating intricate patterns that look like nature's own calligraphy, written across the earth. Your footsteps skirt the edges of these frost pools, leaving them undisturbed, while allowing you to admire their delicate architecture from every angle. You notice how your presence changes the acoustic quality of this space. Where silence once reigned supreme, now there's the gentle percussion of your movement, a rhythm that seems to enhance rather than disturb the morning's peace. The sound of your footsteps creates a kind of meditation, a repetitive cadence that helps settle your mind even deeper into the tranquil embrace of dawn. Each step becomes a moment of mindfulness, a conscious connection between your body and this transformed landscape. As you continue your slow pilgrimage across the frosted meadow, you become aware of how the cold air moves differently around your walking form. The slight breeze that seemed so still when you were stationary now reveals itself through the gentle resistance against your face. The way it carries the sharp, clean scent of frost directly to your nostrils. This isn't the harsh bite of deep winter wind, but something far more subtle, a cool caress that speaks of temperatures just below the freezing point, of that perfect balance where ice can form without the violence of bitter cold. Your breath creates small clouds that drift and dissipate in the morning air, adding your own temporary contribution to the atmosphere of this sacred space. These little puffs of warmth seem almost like incense in a natural cathedral, visible prayers rising into the crystalline air. You find yourself breathing more consciously, aware that each exhale sends a bit of your warmth into this cold morning, while each inhale draws the purified air deep into your lungs, clean and sharp and somehow more substantial than the air of other seasons. The meadow stretches before you with an invitation to explore at your own gentle pace. There's no urgency here, no pressure to reach any particular destination. Instead, you're free to let your curiosity guide your steps, to pause whenever something catches your attention, to change direction based on nothing more than the way the light falls across a particular patch of frost-covered ground. This freedom feels luxurious. This permission to move through the world, guided only by wonder and the simple pleasure of being present in such a transformed landscape. You find yourself drawn toward a slight rise in the meadow, where the frost seems to have settled with particular artistry. As your feet carry you up this gentle slope, you notice how your elevation changes your perspective on the surrounding landscape. What had appeared flat from ground level now reveals subtle variations in texture and tone, areas where the frost lies thicker or thinner, where the emerging sunlight creates different intensities of illumination. From this small vantage point, you can see the path your footsteps have traced across the meadow, a gentle line of slightly compressed frost, marking your passage through this winter wonderland. The ground beneath your feet feels different here on the rise, more solid somehow, as if the slight elevation has allowed better drainage and created a firmer surface beneath the frozen grass. Your steps make a different sound here, still soft, but with a subtle change in pitch that your ears register without your mind needing to analyze. It's simply another layer in the complex sensory experience of this morning walk, another detail that makes this moment unique and irreplaceable. Behind you, the trail of your footsteps catches the morning light in a way that makes your passage visible as a gentle line across the frost. There's something beautiful about this temporary record of your journey, this evidence of your presence in this transformed space. Your footprints don't detract from the natural artistry of the frosted meadow. Instead, they seem to add a human element that somehow completes the scene, a reminder that nature and human consciousness can exist in harmony, that it's possible to move through the world with enough gentleness that your presence enhances rather than disrupts the delicate beauty around you. As you stand on this small elevation, you become aware of how the morning light falls differently on your face and body. The sun, still low on the horizon, sends rays that seem to seek you out across the frosted landscape, warming the side of your face while leaving the other in cool shadow. This play of temperature across your skin adds another dimension to your experience. The contrast between the cool air and the gentle warmth of early sunlight, creating a sensation that's both invigorating and deeply relaxing. The view from here encompasses the entire meadow, transformed now into something that looks more like an abstract painting than a familiar landscape. The frost has created patterns that flow and eddy across the ground like frozen water, like snow drifts made of light, like the fossilized memory of wind moving across the earth. Your eyes can follow these patterns for long minutes, tracing their curves and intersections, finding new details and connections with each moment of observation. You decide to continue your gentle pilgrimage, stepping down from the rise and allowing your feet to carry you toward another area of the meadow that has caught your attention. This part of your journey takes you through a section where the grass grows taller, where the frost has decorated each blade individually, creating what looks like a field of tiny silver sculptures. Walking here requires even more care, even more attention to where you place each foot, and you find this increased mindfulness deeply satisfying, a form of moving meditation that connects you intimately with each step of your journey. The taller grass creates a different acoustic environment as you move through it. Your steps now disturb not just the frost-covered ground, but also the crystalline decorations on the grass blades themselves, creating a sound like the gentlest wind chimes, like tiny bells made of ice and air. This delicate music follows your movement across the meadow, a soundtrack that exists only for as long as you're walking, only for as long as your passage creates the perfect conditions for these ephemeral sounds to emerge. You notice how your body has adapted to this environment, how your posture has naturally adjusted to move with greater care and awareness through this delicate landscape. Your steps have become softer, more considered, and your overall bearing has taken on a quality of reverence that feels entirely appropriate for this sacred morning hour. There's no effort in this adjustment. It has happened as naturally as breathing, your body's intuitive response to finding itself in a space that calls for gentleness and respect. The cold has begun to penetrate more deeply now, not uncomfortably, but noticeably. Your cheeks feel crisp and awakened, your hands, perhaps, seeking the warmth of your pockets. But these sensations only serve to heighten your awareness of the contrast between your warm, living presence and the crystalline stillness of the landscape around you. You are a bearer of warmth, moving through a world temporarily claimed by cold, and there's something profoundly beautiful about this juxtaposition, this reminder of the dynamic relationship between different states of being, different expressions of the natural world's endless creativity. This awareness of yourself as a moving center of life energy creates an almost musical quality to your journey across the frost-touched meadows. Each breath you take sends small clouds of vapor into the crisp air, creating temporary sculptures that dissipate and reform with a rhythm all their own. The sound of your footsteps changes as you move from the harder, frost-crusted grass into softer patches where the morning dew has not yet surrendered to ice, creating a subtle percussion that harmonizes with the deeper symphony beginning to emerge from the awakening landscape around you. As you pause beside a weathered fence post, its wooden surface darkened with moisture and decorated with intricate frost patterns that spiral upward like frozen vines, you become aware that the silence you first noticed is not silence at all. It's the most delicate composition, a lullaby being performed by the morning itself. The gentle creaking of tree branches adjusting to the changing temperature creates intermittent bass notes, deep and reassuring. Higher up in the register, the almost imperceptible whisper of frost crystals shifting and settling on grass blades adds a crystalline percussion, like wind chimes made of ice, touching in the gentlest breeze. Your ears attune themselves more deeply to this natural orchestra, and you begin to distinguish individual voices within the collective song. There's the soft flutter of a bird's wing somewhere in the middle distance, followed by the brief scratch of tiny claws finding purchase on bark, a field mouse perhaps, or a vole moving through the frost-stiffened grass with quick, purposeful steps that create their own miniature rhythm. These small movements don't disturb the peace. Instead, they weave themselves into it, adding layers of life and activity that speak of the world's quiet persistence, even in the deepest stillness. The melody grows richer as you continue your slow wandering through this frost-painted morning gallery, a gentle breath of wind arrives, barely strong enough to be called a breeze, but sufficient to set the dried seed heads of tall grasses swaying with a papery whisper. The sound reminds you of pages turning in an old book, or perhaps rice being poured into a bowl. Soft, granular, infinitely soothing. This same breath of air carries with it the most subtle fragrances, the green scent of grass made sharper by cold, the earthy richness of soil that retains yesterday's warmth beneath its frost blanket, and something else, the clean, almost metallic smell that belongs uniquely to morning air when ice has touched the world. You find yourself drawn to a small grove of apple trees that stand like ancient guardians at the meadow's edge. Their branches, now bare except for a few stubborn leaves that cling with admirable determination, create intricate silhouettes against the gradually brightening sky. The frost has transformed each twig into something magical, coating them in ice so delicate and pure that they seem to have been dipped in liquid moonlight and left to crystallize. As you approach, you notice that your movement through the air creates the faintest disturbance, and some of the more delicately balanced frost formations respond with tiny musical chimes as ice touches ice in the gentlest possible collisions. Here beneath the apple trees, the ground is carpeted with fallen leaves in various stages of their return to earth. Some still retain their autumn colors, but wear them muted now, like watercolors painted on damp paper. Others have progressed further in their transformation, becoming brown and gold and copper, their edges curled and crisp with frost that outlines each vein and serration with startling clarity. When you brush against a low-hanging branch, a few of these leaves release their hold and drift downward in lazy spirals, each one adding its own quiet note to the morning's lullaby as it settles among its companions on the forest floor. The orchestration of this peaceful dawn continues to reveal new instruments and melodies the longer you remain still and attentive. From somewhere deeper in the grove comes the soft but distinct sound of water moving, not the rush of a stream, but something gentler. Following this liquid voice, you discover a small spring that emerges from beneath the roots of the largest apple tree. The water moves with unhurried purpose across smooth stones, creating a sound like liquid conversation, soft consonants and flowing vowels in a language older than words. Frost has formed elaborate sculptures around the spring's edges, but the moving water itself remains unfrozen, dark and clear and somehow warmer than the air around it. Settling onto a fallen log that provides a perfect seat beside this hidden water source, you become part of the scene, rather than merely an observer of it. Your breathing naturally slows and deepens in response to the tranquil rhythms surrounding you. The spring's gentle music combines with the subtle sounds of the frost-touched world, the occasional crack of ice expanding, the whisper of your own clothing as you settle more comfortably, the distant call of a crow that carries across the meadows and fades into the growing light of day. The temperature seems to be finding its own perfect balance here in this sheltered spot. While the open meadows remain firmly in frost's grip, the grove provides just enough protection to create a microclimate where cold and warmth exist in gentle equilibrium. You can feel this balance on your skin, the kiss of cool air on your cheeks, contrasted with the retained warmth of your body beneath your clothing. The cold touch of the log beneath you, gradually giving way as your own heat creates a small zone of comfort in the winter morning. As minutes pass unmarked and unmeasured, you realize that you've become part of nature's lullaby rather than simply its audience. Your heartbeat joins the rhythm section. Your breathing adds to the wind instruments, and your presence contributes to the overall harmony of this peaceful composition. There's something profoundly restful about this integration, this sense of belonging not just to the scene, but to the entire gentle symphony of morning, awakening in the frost-touched countryside. The light continues its gradual transformation from the deep blue of pre-dawn to something softer and more golden. This change happens so slowly that it's almost imperceptible moment to moment, like watching flowers bloom or watching paint dry, but infinitely more beautiful and meaningful. The frost responds to this warming light by beginning its own subtle transformation, not melting yet. The air remains too cool for that, but shifting, settling, catching the light differently as the sun finds new angles through the bare branches of the apple trees. You notice that your eyes have adjusted completely to the gentle illumination, revealing details that were hidden in the deeper darkness of early morning. The bark of the apple tree beside you shows intricate patterns of lichen growth, gray-green patches that have formed their own miniature landscapes across the trunk's surface. Frost has outlined these tiny ecosystems with delicate precision, creating what looks like aerial maps of imaginary countries, complete with coastlines and mountain ranges rendered in ice crystals no larger than pinheads. The water from the spring has carved smooth channels in the earth as it flows away from its source, and you follow these channels with your eyes, noting how they curve and branch like the veins in a leaf or the rivers viewed from a great height. Small pools have formed where the water encounters obstacles, a fallen branch here, a cluster of stones there, and in these pools, the surface remains so still that it reflects the slowly brightening sky like mirrors embedded in the earth. A weathered wooden gate appears ahead, its surface painted in that particular shade of sage green that seems to exist only in countryside settings, now decorated with frost patterns that spiral and dance across the wood grain like nature's own calligraphy. The metal latch feels surprisingly warm to the touch, despite the cold morning, and it opens with a gentle creak that sounds like a sigh of welcome. Beyond the gate, a narrow path winds between hedgerows that have become galleries of ice sculpture overnight, each twig and berry transformed into art by winter's first gentle intervention. The hedgerows themselves tell fascinating stories of adaptation and acceptance. Blackberry canes, their summer generosity now just a memory, wear their frost coating with surprising elegance, their thorns softened by crystal sheaths that make them appear almost decorative rather than defensive. Wild rose hips glow like small lanterns through their frosted covering. Nature's way of ensuring that even in this moment of seasonal pause, there remains the promise of nourishment and continuity. As you follow the winding path deeper into this transformed landscape, you become aware of how the frost has created an entirely new topography of texture and sensation. Surfaces that were smooth yesterday now sparkle with intricate patterns, while rough bark and weathered stone have been softened by their crystal coating, creating a world where touch reveals surprises at every turn. Your fingers trail along a frost-covered fence rail, and the sensation is like touching velvet made of winter light, simultaneously cold and somehow comforting. The quality of sound in this frost-touched world has its own particular magic. Sounds seem to carry differently through the cold, crisp air. Distant church bells ring with unusual clarity, their bronze voices seeming to hang in the atmosphere longer than usual, creating overlapping harmonies that fade so gradually you can't quite identify the moment they disappear into silence. A dog barks somewhere in the village beyond the fields, and the sound arrives wrapped in such clarity that you can almost picture the creature, breath visible in small puffs as it announces the arrival of this special morning. The path leads you past an ancient oak tree whose massive trunk speaks of decades spent witnessing seasonal transformations, just like this one. Its deeply furrowed bark creates perfect channels for frost to settle and accumulate, turning the entire trunk into a living map of winter's artistry. Some of the oak's leaves still cling to the lower branches, each one now outlined in silver as if traced by an artist's careful hand. These leaves rustle with a sound quite different from their summer voice, drier, more papery, yet somehow more musical, like wind chimes made of parchment and memory. Beneath the oak, the ground is carpeted with fallen leaves in various stages of their return to earth, some still holding their autumn colors of amber and copper, others already fading to the soft browns that speak of transformation in progress. The frost has settled into every curve and crease of these fallen leaves, highlighting their intricate vein patterns and creating what looks like a manuscript written in a language of seasons, telling stories of growth and change, and the eternal cycle of renewal that governs all living things. You pause beneath this ancient sentinel, feeling yourself naturally drawn into its sphere of quiet wisdom. The oak seems to radiate a particular kind of peace that comes only from having weathered countless seasonal transitions, having learned the deep truth that change and stability are not opposites but partners in the dance of existence. Standing in its presence, you feel some of that same rootedness settling into your own being, a recognition that you too are part of this eternal cycle of transformation and renewal. The morning light has been gradually strengthening during your journey, and now it begins to work its gentle alchemy on the frost-covered world around you. The transformation is so subtle you almost miss it at first. Just a slight softening at the edges of ice crystals, a barely perceptible shift in the way light reflects from frozen surfaces. But gradually you become aware that you are witnessing one of nature's most delicate daily miracles, the moment when winter's first gift begins its return to the earth that created it. Individual blades of grass begin to emerge from their crystal sheaths like small green exclamation points, each one seeming to stretch and breathe as it's released from frost's gentle grip. The process is so gradual, it's like watching flowers bloom in extreme slow motion, each blade revealing itself with infinite patience as the warming air performs its daily act of liberation. There's something deeply moving about witnessing this quiet drama of release and renewal, this reminder that even the most delicate transformations follow their own perfect timing. The scent of the morning begins to shift and deepen as the frost releases its hold on the landscape, unlocking fragrances that have been held in crystalline suspension through the night. Earth begins to speak again in its rich, complex voice, while the green smell of awakening grass adds its note to the symphony of scents. The air itself seems to soften, becoming less sharp and more welcoming, as if the world is gradually remembering how to breathe after holding itself in winter's first careful pause. This slow unveiling feels like participating in a daily resurrection, a gentle reminder that change need not be dramatic or sudden to be profound. The frost's retreat teaches its own lesson about the beauty of gradual transformation, showing how even the most complete changes can happen with such grace and gentleness that they feel less like endings and more like natural progressions in an ongoing story of becoming. As you continue along the path, now witnessing this miraculous daily transition from winter's first whisper back toward autumn's final breath, you carry with you a deep sense of having been present for something sacred. Not just the meeting of seasons, but the eternal teaching that change itself can be a form of peace when met with acceptance and wonder rather than resistance or fear. This wisdom settles into your bones as the path curves gently downward, leading you toward a sheltered dell where ancient oak trees stand sentinel over a natural amphitheater of soft earth. The frost here has created something altogether different from the open meadows, a crystalline canopy overhead where ice particles cling to the network of bare branches, forming an intricate ceiling of winter's artistry. Each breath you take sends small puffs of vapor upward, where they seem to join the delicate dance of condensation among the twisted limbs above. The ground beneath your feet has softened into a carpet of fallen leaves that crunch with satisfying whispers as you move deeper into this protected grove. Here, sheltered from the wind that stirred the grasses earlier, the air holds a different quality, warmer, somehow as if the trees themselves are breathing slowly around you, their massive trunks storing decades of summer heat and releasing it now in barely perceptible waves. You can smell the rich earthiness of decomposing leaves mixed with the clean sharpness of frost, creating a fragrance that speaks of cycles within cycles, seasons folding into one another like pages in an ancient book. As you settle yourself against the broad trunk of the largest oak, its bark rough and reassuring against your back, you notice how the frost has transformed this sheltered space into something that exists between waking and sleeping. The ice crystals catching the early light create patterns that shift and shimmer, almost like the visual echoes of dreams themselves, fleeting, beautiful, impossible to grasp directly but undeniably present. Your eyelids grow heavy not from tiredness, but from the profound sense of safety this grove offers, as if you've discovered a place where the boundary between consciousness and rest has grown thin and permeable. The frost-covered branches above form a natural dome, and as you gaze upward through half-closed eyes, the intricate patterns begin to blur and merge. What moments before appeared as distinct twigs and ice crystals now flow together into something resembling the delicate tracery of neural pathways, or perhaps the branching waterways of some celestial delta where thoughts and dreams converge. The morning light filtering through this frozen canopy creates soft pools of illumination that pulse gently, synchronized with your own quiet breathing, as if the entire grove has attuned itself to the rhythm of your slowing heartbeat. You become aware of the most subtle sounds in this protected space. The occasional gentle ping of ice expanding on a distant branch, the soft whisper of a few remaining leaves trembling in the slight air currents, the deep silence that seems to emanate from the earth itself. These sounds don't disturb your growing drowsiness, but rather enhance it, creating a natural lullaby that speaks in the ancient language of seasons and cycles. Your body begins to feel wonderfully heavy, as if you're slowly sinking into the accumulated wisdom of all the autumns and winters that have passed through this grove before you. The frost overhead continues its slow transformation, and you realize you're witnessing something remarkable. The moment when night's frozen dreams begin their daily metamorphosis back into liquid possibility. Tiny droplets form at the tips of icicles, catching the strengthening light like captured stars preparing to fall back to earth. Each drop holds within it the memory of last night's crystalline perfection and tomorrow's flowing potential, suspended in a perfect moment of becoming that mirrors your own state between wakefulness and rest. As your breathing deepens and slows, the patterns in the frost-covered branches above seem to respond, their configurations shifting subtly as if rearranging themselves into the visual language of dreams. What had appeared solid and fixed now reveals itself to be fluid and responsive, a living mandala of ice and light that pulses with its own gentle intelligence. You feel your conscious mind beginning to drift, not away from this beautiful scene, but deeper into it, as if you're gradually becoming part of the grove's own seasonal dreaming. The massive oak supporting you seems to extend its protection downward through its roots and upward through its frost-laden branches, creating a vertical sanctuary that connects the deep earth with the pale sky. You can almost sense the slow circulation of sap within the trunk, dormant now, but carrying the promise of spring's eventual return, patient and unhurried in its winter rest. This ancient rhythm seeps into your own body, teaching your muscles to release their subtle tensions, showing your mind how to rest without urgency or agenda, simply because rest is the natural complement to activity, just as winter is the natural complement to summer. Your vision grows softer at the edges, and the frost patterns overhead begin to merge with the gentle shapes that form behind your closing eyelids. The boundary between the external beauty of this ice-jeweled grove and your internal landscape of approaching dreams becomes increasingly irrelevant. Both spaces seem to be part of a larger continuum, a seamless flow between the outer world's frosted artistry and your inner world's capacity for restoration and renewal. The cold morning air continues to fill your lungs with clarity, while the earth beneath you offers its solid support, creating perfect conditions for the deep rest that your body instinctively knows how to embrace. Time itself seems to slow in this protected space, each moment expanding to accommodate whatever needs to unfold. The frost overhead releases occasional tiny crystals that drift downward, like the gentlest snow, landing on your clothes, your hands, your face with touches so light they feel like whispered blessings. Your awareness of these sensations becomes increasingly dreamlike, more impression than sensation, as your nervous system gradually shifts into the profound receptivity that precedes genuine sleep. The grove holds you in its ancient arms, offering the accumulated peace of countless seasons, the deep knowing that comes from roots that have drunk from underground springs for decades, beyond counting. The patterns of ice and light above continue their slow dance, and you realize that you're being invited to join this movement, not through any effort of your own, but through the simple act of surrender, of allowing your conscious control to dissolve into the larger intelligence that governs the turning of seasons and the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Your thoughts become like the frost itself, delicate, temporary, beautiful in their brief existence before melting back into the vast stillness from which they arose. The grove dreams around you and through you, including you in its vast, slow meditation on the themes of rest and renewal, dormancy and eventual awakening. As the last threads of conscious thought begin to loosen and drift away like morning mist, you rest in the perfect knowledge that you are held, supported, embraced by something infinitely larger and wiser than your individual concerns. The frost-covered branches overhead have become a cathedral of dreams, their crystalline beauty both covering and revealing the vast sky beyond, teaching you that true rest is not an absence, but a presence. The presence of profound trust in the natural order that governs all things, from the formation of ice crystals to the deep restoration that comes when you allow yourself to sleep beneath winter's first gentle sky. This trust settles into your bones like warmth from a distant hearth, and as it does, you become aware that the meadow itself is speaking, not in words, but in the subtle language of frost-touched grass and the almost imperceptible stirring of earth beneath winter's first touch. Your footsteps have brought you to the very heart of the meadow now, where the grass grows tallest and the frost has created its most intricate patterns. Here, in this protected hollow, the morning light filters through with a gentleness that seems to slow time itself. You kneel down, your knees sinking slightly into the soft earth, and the cold seeps through the fabric of your clothing in a way that feels grounding rather than uncomfortable. It's the kind of cold that reminds you of your body's boundaries while simultaneously dissolving them. The frost-covered grass surrounds you like a living carpet, each blade transformed into something precious and temporary. When you place your palm flat against this frosted earth, You feel the meadow's pulse, not the quick rhythm of a heartbeat, but something far more ancient and steady, like the breathing of the earth itself. The grass whispers as a barely perceptible breeze moves through it, creating a sound so subtle it might be your imagination, yet so persistent, you know it's real. It's the sound of 10,000 tiny ice crystals brushing against each other, of moisture held in suspension between liquid and solid, of morning conversations between blade and sky. You close your eyes and let this whisper fill your ears, realizing that this is what secrets sound like when they're shared willingly. Not the sharp clarity of spoken words, but the soft susurrus of things too beautiful to be contained in language. Your hand pressed to the earth begins to warm the frost directly beneath your palm, creating a small circle where ice returns to dew. This tiny transformation happens so gradually you hardly notice it, but suddenly you're aware of moisture against your skin, of the earth's grateful acceptance of your touch. Around your hand, the frost remains pristine, but this one small space has become a point of connection, a place where your warmth and the meadow's coolness have found perfect balance. The dew that forms feels like the meadow's way of acknowledging your presence, not dramatic or overwhelming, but gentle and sure. As you remain still in this kneeling position, other secrets begin to reveal themselves. There's the way certain patches of grass lean slightly toward the east, still remembering the sun's first touch even though morning has fully arrived. There's the particular shade of silver that frost creates when it covers clover leaves, different from the white it forms on grass, more luminous and complex. You notice how some areas of the meadow are completely transformed by frost, while others, protected by the slightest depression or the shelter of a taller plant, remain green and yielding. These variations create a landscape within a landscape, a geography of microclimates that speaks of the meadow's infinite complexity. No 2 square inches are exactly alike. The frost has mapped every subtle contour, every tiny valley and hill in this sea of grass, creating patterns that would take hours to fully explore. Your eyes trace these frost-drawn boundaries, following the way ice crystals cluster more thickly in the sheltered spots where moisture collected overnight, then thin to almost to nothing on the exposed crowns of small rises. The morning air carries scents that seem to emerge from the frost itself. The clean, sharp smell of frozen dew mixed with the earthier fragrance of soil that has spent all night breathing beneath its crystalline blanket. There's something almost mineral in this combination, like the scent of stones washed clean by rain, but warmer somehow, touched by the living presence of root and seed, waiting beneath the surface. When you breathe deeply, these fragrances seem to settle into your chest with a coolness that's both invigorating and calming. Above you, the sky has shifted from the pale pearl of early morning to something deeper and more complex. Still light, but with suggestions of blue beginning to assert themselves at the edges of your vision. The frost responds to this changing light by seeming to glow more brightly, as if it's gathering the sky's luminescence and reflecting it back in countless tiny mirrors. Every ice crystal has become a lens, focusing and fracturing the morning light into spectrums so brief they barely register before disappearing. You shift your weight slightly, moving from kneeling to sitting cross-legged on the frosted grass, and the cold comes up through the earth to meet you. Not shocking or unpleasant, but substantial in a way that makes you more aware of your own warmth. The contrast creates a sensation of being held between two different states of being. The vibrant warmth of your living body and the crystalline stillness of the winter meadow. Rather than choosing between them, you find yourself inhabiting both simultaneously. The grass beneath you begins to warm gradually from your body heat, and you can feel the frost slowly releasing its hold on the blades directly under you. It's such a subtle process that you wouldn't notice it if you weren't sitting so still. But there it is. The gentle transformation from rigid crystal back to flexible green. The meadow is adapting to your presence just as you're adapting to its temperature and rhythm. This mutual accommodation feels like the beginning of a deeper conversation, one conducted entirely through sensation and temperature. From this sitting position, you notice details that were invisible when you were standing. The way spider webs, invisible in ordinary conditions, are now outlined in frost, like delicate embroidery suspended between grass stems. Each web tells the story of its creation. You can see where the spider began, how the radial threads were laid down first, then the careful spiral that forms the catching surface. The frost has preserved these architectural marvels in perfect detail, turning them into temporary sculptures that will vanish as soon as the sun climbs higher. There are tracks too, now that you know how to look. Not footprints exactly, but subtle trails where small creatures moved through the grass during the night, their passage marked by slight disruptions in the frost pattern. A rabbit's path curves around a cluster of taller stems. The zigzag route of a mouse shows where it paused to investigate different scents. These traces of nocturnal activity create a map of the meadow's hidden life, visible now only because the frost has recorded every disturbance, every moment when a living creature brushed against the crystalline surface of the grass. The longer you sit, the more the meadow's deeper rhythms become apparent. There's a subtle movement in the grass that has nothing to do with wind. The almost imperceptible expansion and contraction of plants, responding to the changing light and temperature. Stems that were rigid with frost 20 minutes ago are beginning to show the faintest suggestion of flexibility as the ice slowly sublimates in the strengthening sun. This transformation is happening so gradually that it's more felt than seen, like watching the hands of a clock move. Your breathing has synchronized itself with this slow rhythm without your conscious intention. Each exhale creates a small cloud of vapor that hangs briefly in the cold air before dissipating, adding your own moisture to the meadow's careful balance of ice and air and warmth. The vapor from your breath catches the morning light for just a moment before disappearing, reminding you that you're part of this delicate ecosystem of temperature and transformation. As the sun continues its climb, you notice that the frost is beginning its daily retreat. It doesn't melt all at once, but withdraws strategically, disappearing first from the most exposed surfaces while clinging longer in the shadows and sheltered spots. This creates an ever-changing pattern across the meadow, like watching a slow tide recede across a shore of grass. The areas where frost remains become islands of crystalline beauty in a sea of returning green, each one unique in its shape and duration. The meadow's secrets are temporal, as well as spatial, you realize. What you're witnessing exists only in this narrow window between night and full day, when frost and warmth hold each other in perfect tension. In an hour, this crystalline landscape will be gone, replaced by the ordinary green of winter grass. But for now, for these precious minutes, you're privy to one of nature's most subtle performances, the daily negotiation between ice and light, cold and warmth, stillness and the stirring promise of movement that will carry you gently toward the deep rest that awaits. You settle deeper into this moment of perfect balance, feeling how the frost-touched earth beneath you has found its own rhythm of giving and receiving. The meadow grass, still rigid with ice crystals, begins to yield ever so slightly under the growing warmth, each blade releasing its frozen grip on the night one microscopic degree at a time. Your breath mingles with the rising mist, becoming part of this gentle conversation between earth and sky, cold and warmth, ending and beginning. The light continues its patient work, and you notice how individual dewdrops have formed perfect spheres on spider webs stretched between the grass stems. Each drop holds a miniature world, upside-down reflections of the pale morning sky, tiny captured moments of this transition that's happening all around you. The web trembles almost imperceptibly as moisture gathers, as if the spider has woven not just silk, but anticipation itself into these delicate anchor points between stalks of winter grass. Your eyes drift across the field's gentle undulations, following how the frost creates its own geography of highlight and shadow. In the slight depressions where cold air has pooled through the night, the white coating remains thick and determined. But along the subtle rises, where even the gentlest morning breeze has stirred the air, you can see the first hints of green beginning to emerge through the thinning crystal layer. It's like watching a photograph develop in slow motion, the true colors of winter grass gradually asserting themselves through the temporary veil of ice. Somewhere in the distance, a single bird offers a tentative call, not the full-throated song of spring, but the careful, questioning note of a creature testing the morning's mood. The sound seems to travel unusually far in the cold air, reaching you with a clarity that makes you realize how still everything else has become. Even your own heartbeat feels quieter now, synchronized with this gentle rhythm of awakening that requires no urgency, no sudden movements, only this patient witnessing of change. You become aware of your hands, how they've grown cool in the morning air, and you tuck them closer to yourself, feeling the contrast between the chill on your skin and the warmth your body creates. This small movement makes you notice how you've become part of the landscape's thermal map, a point of warmth in the frost-touched field, contributing your own small influence to the intricate dance between hot and cold that's reshaping everything around you with such subtle persistence. The scent in the air shifts almost imperceptibly. That sharp, clean smell of frost begins to soften, mixing with something earthier. The smell of soil beginning to exhale, of grass roots stirring with the first whisper of metabolic activity. It's the faintest suggestion of green life beneath winter's surface. So subtle you're not entirely sure you're not imagining it. But there it is, threading through the cold air like a promise, written in a language older than words. A gentle breeze stirs across the meadow, barely strong enough to move the grass, but sufficient to carry this changing bouquet of scents. You breathe it in slowly, feeling how the cold air fills your lungs and then warms as your body receives it. Even this simple act of breathing becomes part of the meadow's rhythm, part of the patient exchange between you and this crystalline morning world. As minutes pass, though time seems to move differently here, measured not by clocks, but by the gradual retreat of frost, you notice how the quality of silence itself is changing. The absolute stillness of deep night is giving way to something softer, a quiet that holds possibility rather than emptiness. It's the difference between a held breath and gentle breathing, between waiting and simply being present for whatever unfolds. Your gaze settles on a patch of grass nearby, where the frost forms intricate patterns, like nature's own calligraphy written across each blade. The crystals have grown in tiny branching structures, creating microscopic trees of ice that catch and scatter the pale light. You could spend hours examining just this small square of meadow, discovering the endless creativity that emerges when water and cold air collaborate through the slow hours of night. But even as you watch, these delicate structures begin their quiet dissolution, not melting dramatically, but softening at the edges, the sharp points of the crystals rounding as molecules decide to release their frozen architecture and return to the easier flow of liquid. It happens so gradually that you have to look away and then look back to be certain it's happening at all. The light grows incrementally warmer, though the sun itself remains hidden behind a gentle veil of morning haze. This is illumination without glare, brightness without harshness, the kind of light that invites rather than demands attention. Under its influence, the entire meadow seems to be breathing, expanding and contracting almost imperceptibly as surface is warm and cool in the delicate balance of early winter morning. You feel yourself becoming quieter inside, matching the meadow's patient rhythm. Your thoughts slow down, becoming less like urgent messages and more like distant clouds drifting across an inner sky. There's nowhere to go, nothing to accomplish except this gentle witnessing, this simple presence in a moment that exists only once and will never be repeated exactly this way again. A second bird adds its voice to the morning, then a third, but their calls remain soft and questioning rather than bold. They're participants in this gradual awakening, not announcers of it. The sound layers with the almost silence of frost retreating, of grass slowly flexing, of air beginning its daily circulation between earth and the sky. The cold touches your face differently now, still present, still sharp, but no longer the absolute ruler of the morning. You can feel how it's beginning to negotiate with other influences, the warming air, the light finding its strength, the stirring of life that winter slows but never completely stops. Your cheeks tingle with this gentle conversation between temperatures, this slow dance of thermal change that makes you part of the meadow's larger pattern of warming and cooling. You notice how your breathing has naturally slowed, each exhale visible for a moment as it meets the cold air, then dispersing into the growing brightness. These small clouds of breath become visible prayers, temporary offerings to the morning that appear and fade with the rhythm of your own life force. There's something deeply calming about seeing your breath this way, watching the evidence of your aliveness mix with the air that connects you to everything growing and stirring in this frost-touched field. The grass beneath you begins to soften ever so slightly as the earth responds to the changing air. And so, the story gently fades, like stars at dawn. Sleep well, dear listener. I'll be here whenever you need me. Good night.